Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Penn Vicarage on this Wednesday morning. Lovely to see you, and thank you so much for joining us for our Bible talk for today as we continue our adventure through the Psalms. Just to remind you, put the Psalm in context. Today's is Psalm 131, and we're in book 5 of the Psalms. There are 5 books of Psalms, and we're amongst 15 what they call songs of ascent, which means songs of going up, songs that were used by pilgrims on their way to Jerusalem. And today's Psalm 131. It's a song that was sent this time. It's one by David. It's specified that it was actually David that wrote this one. So without further ado, nice little psalm, this one, 131. O Lord, my heart is not lifted up. My eyes are not raised too high. I do not occupy myself with things too great and too marvellous for me. But I have calmed and quieted my soul, like a weaned child with its mother. My soul is like the weaned child that is with me. O Israel, hope in the Lord, from this time on and forevermore. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Lovely little picture, this one. Just to remind you really of the structure of the psalm, verses 1 and 2 and verse 3 are the two sections. Verse 1 and 2 is basically a prayer, and verse 3 is a message to the people around. So verse 1 and 2 is David is talking to God, and in verse 3 he's talking to the people of Israel. It says two bits, it says 1 and 2, and there's verse 3 as well. I think the first thing also to remind us, which this kind of psalm reminds us, is that these were written in poetry. They were meant to be songs. You can see it because the poets were used, and he used a thing called parallelism. Notice, oh Lord, my heart is not lifted up, my heart. Then he goes on to say, my eyes are not lifted too high. I do not occupy myself with things that are too great. Okay, so so he kind of repeats himself there three times in that first verse. He kind of says the same thing 3 times. And in verse 2, I've calmed my soul and quieted myself like a weaned child. And he goes, my soul like the weaned child that is with me. So if you like, you this kind of reminds us really that these are written in poetry, and obviously Hebrew poetry is very different to English poetry, but he used a thing called parallelism. He basically says the same thing twice or sometimes even 3 times. So it reminds us really that these were originally songs and written for poetry. And I think that's really important actually. Somebody once said that, and I think they're right, that people's theology is much more based by what they sing than what they read. Which is why Charles Wesley, the brother of John Wesley, founded Methodism. Charles Wesley used to write these amazing hymns like "Oh, for a Thousand Tongues to Sing" and "Hark the Herald Angels Sing" and things like that. And these are rammed full of great thoughts about God, but people would remember them because they were sung, and especially in the days before people could read, songs, words of songs would stick in the brain. And even to this day, often don't you find that the things that you sing, songs that you sing in church and so on, especially some of the better hymns and so on, you kind of go home and you're still singing them when you get home as well. And in a sense, the Psalms are too. The Psalms were originally songs. They weren't in poetry. They were meant to be sung as well as said. And so they stick in the brain better. And in a sense, this psalm kind of, because of its parallelism, saying 3 times about heart went off it up, and verse 2 about saying twice about being like a weaned child, it does kind of remind us really that these songs were originally written as songs. They were meant to be poetic, they were meant to have tune to them, and they were meant to be sung as well. So the structure of the psalm is verses 1 and 2, which is a prayer, and verse 3, which is a talk to the people around. And this also reminds us that these were, as I say, he repeats himself. He uses a thing called parallelism within each verse, which kind of reminds us really that these were meant to be songs, or they were meant to be sung too. So verse 1 is unusual because it's a triple negative actually. O Lord, my heart is not lifted up. My eyes are not lifted too high. I do not occupy myself with things too great and marvellous for me. So in a sense, verse 1 is quite unusual because he uses a triple negative here. Now this is not, let me say from clear, the meaning of this is not someone that's low in self-esteem. This is not someone that's paranoid. This is not someone that has a low opinion of themselves per se. But it is, however, somebody who is dependent on God. That's what it's trying to say. This person's not saying that, I'm a filthy, rotten scumbag, I can't do anything, I'm rubbish at everything, and I can't do this, and I can't do that, and I can't do that. That's not what it's saying at all. This person, David here, is not somebody, I don't think, who is low on self-esteem. David was wonderfully honest through his life. And what he's saying here is that he's depending on God. He doesn't occupy himself, despite the fact he was a king, with things too great and marvellous for him. It's not someone that's low on self-esteem. This is a picture here of somebody who is trusting in God. And being humble, humility, is not about saying that you're a terrible, terrible person. It's simply about saying that, compared to us, we are very small and God is very, very big. And it was the old song used to say, old hymn, immortal, invisible, God only wise, that we, it's not saying that we're unintelligent, but not saying we're stupid. Ultimately, our brains are made in the image of God. Our brains are good. Our brains are powerful. God's given us a great brain to use. We're supposed to love God with our heart, soul, mind, and strength. But what this is about saying is that, is about however clever we may think we are, God is much more strong, much more intelligent, and much cleverer than we are. And actually, human beings can be very arrogant from time to time. We think that we know everything. We like to think that we're terribly, terribly clever, and we are clever, but we're not clever compared to God. And so, first one, as I say, is not the sign of somebody who is talking down to themselves. In a sense, instead, is very much somebody who is dependent on God. David himself was not unintelligent. David was a very, very intelligent person, tremendously blessed by God. But he is reminding himself here, he's talking to God and he's saying that, I'm trusting in you, O Lord. Then in verse 2, he puts a lovely picture to this actually. This is a beautiful, beautiful picture. I have calmed and quieted my soul like a weaned child with its mother. Like a soul, like the weaned child that's with me. Imagine a small child or a weaned child, maybe 1 year old or something, sort of cuddling up to his mum's breast. And I think that's just a lovely, lovely picture. What he's saying is, in the same way that a child does that, he says, I am trusting in you, O God. And it's a great picture of the calmness that he has. It's not saying that there aren't bad things going on, and let's face it, children can be very, very needy. But actually, as a child just rests itself totally on his mum's chest. I have calmed and quieted my soul like a weaned child. I was not asking too many questions here, just trusting and resting in God. I forget where it says in the Bible, in quietness and trust is my strength. And I think we all need reminding of that sometimes. We can get very complicated about things, and our faith can get very complicated, and our lives and our walk with God can get very complicated. But here we have King David with all that he had to face, with all the dangers he encountered, in all the trials and tribulations of running a country and so on. He's saying, I have calmed and quieted my soul like a weaned child with its mother. And I think there's a message to all here about the importance of the calmness and the peace that we have by trusting in God. So verse 1 talks about really, we may think we're clever, but actually, God is much more clever than we are. And verse 2 is about the peace and the shalom that we have by trusting in God. Not that bad things don't happen around us. It doesn't say it doesn't here, but it just simply says that God is trustworthy. And that however trustworthy we may think we are, God is so much more so. And then in verse 3, David turns it round. Up to now, he's been talking to God. It's been a prayer. And then from verse 3, he turns it around to the people around him. He says, Israel, hope in the Lord from this time forth and forevermore. In other words, he has found that it works for him, which in a sense, that's why he says God is trustworthy, so we can trust in God going forward. O Israel, hope in the Lord from this time forward and forevermore. So he's saying, I have found this for me. I'm turning it round, and I'm telling you, my friends, it will work for you as well. And in a sense, that's what preaching is about. It's about what we have encountered, passing on to others what we have discovered about God. That God is trustworthy. We can put our hope in him. And that he's saying, I am not lifted up. I'm trusting in the wisdom of God, that God knows what he's doing. And then verse 2, he's calmed himself, and he calmed his soul, and that he can put his trust in God too. So he's saying, everybody, it worked for me, it'll work for you, so do it. And I guess that's what I'm saying to us today. And I know I really need to hear this message today. that I need to be able to just calmly put my trust in, my faith in God, that he knows what he's doing and he's trustworthy. Friends, I hope you found that helpful. Please do share these messages with your friends. Don't forget to press the share button at the bottom so other people can enjoy them too. Have a lovely day. God bless you.